We've made a lot of mistakes. I still make mistakes, but it's a whole lot easier now than it used to be. And there are some things that I wish somebody would have told me. I wish I would have known before I bought a cow. And I want to tell you about some of the lessons that I've learned. And I also asked people on Facebook what their biggest mistakes were, and I want to tell you what those were as well. One person said that one of their biggest mistakes was buying cows. They said, seriously, not being more prepared and knowledgeable cost us a small fortune. The beef cows are easy, but the dairy cows are what handed us our lunch. But lessons have been learned, and we're working on fixing the earlier mistakes. This right here is my milking stanchion, and this is actually one of the mistakes that I made just recently. I used to just tie her up there and she was able to move around a lot, and this makes so she can't move as much, but the problem is I put that thing up too high. There's nothing wrong with it actually working, but the problem is if she would happen to fall, which she has never done, but if she would happen to fall, she would choke herself right there because it's up too high. The other thing is I'm using that square thing back there for her to get her feet out of, which works great. I used to put hay in there and it worked really good for that, but she can't get all the feed out around the corners. So I want to put a different feed bucket there. Somebody also mentioned in the comments one time that the feed thing should be lower, make it more natural for the way that cows normally eat, down on the ground. So I'm going to move that a little bit lower, I think 8 inches. All right, Maddie. So while we're talking about one of the mistakes that I made with the milking stall, let's talk about one of the biggest mistakes that I think people make that kind of goes along with that, and that is not having the right infrastructure in place before you get a cow. The proper infrastructure can be really simple. It doesn't even have to be this much, and this is really simple. This is an old corn crib that I added a lean-to on the side, and that's basically all that I have for a barn, but you gotta have at least something. My evening is slipping away, so there's just no way I'm gonna be able to finish this in here and talk about the other stuff that I want to talk about in this video and get it all done in this evening. So by some editing magic, I am going to be working in here and talking to you out there at the same time. Poof. I can't tell you how many times I scrambled and made mad dashes to get stuff done, working late into the night to get things ready for animals that I had already gotten or that I was getting very, very soon. And that is a big mistake. You just really don't want to have cows out in your pasture knowing that you don't have a shelter for them in case of a storm or something like that, or even shade. You don't want to have that worry on your mind, and you don't want to have that pressure to get things done. So when you're thinking about getting a cow, if you know you're going to get one, go ahead and get the shelter in place. And that goes right along with what some other people on Facebook said. Calves are escape artists, and all cows need retrained on electric if they get out once. They will challenge the fence over and over. And along the lines of fencing, that's another thing that can be really, really simple, but it's obviously something that you've got to have in place before you get the cow. And one of the mistakes that I made when I first got my cows is I put 2 strands of electric wire around the perimeter, and I had a calf get out one time. Thankfully, nothing happened, didn't get lost, didn't get hit on the road or anything like that. But I ended up putting 3 strands around the perimeter. We've had cows for like 7 years now. Never had anything get out of a 3-strand electric fence. And then my dividing fences for my rotational grazing is only a single strand. I don't really care if the young calves go under the fences into the different paddocks. They don't really eat much grass anyways. It's the cows that I want to be rotating. And that single strand keeps them from going from one paddock to another. And that is something else that somebody mentioned too, is that they didn't start out rotational grazing. That's a big deal because for most of us, we don't have a whole lot of extra pasture land. And if you do rotational grazing, it can make your grass go so much farther. So that's something you should learn about and start out doing right away. Start out with something really simple. If you've got kind of a square or rectangular pasture, divide it into like 4 sections or something like that, and then just rotate them through that. That's a really simple way to do it, and it's easy for somebody that's starting out. A couple screws broke off, so that's not gonna be much fun. Try to get that apart. Whoa! So I've got this thing lowered, and I'm not actually gonna finish it right now. I'm just gonna put like a couple screws in to hold it in place, and then finish that feed bucket thing over there, and then get her in here so she can try it out before I actually put all the screws in there and have it all nice and solid. So as I'm going through this, I think one of the biggest things that comes to mind is not having a good mentor, not finding a mentor, not getting your information from a solid source, a trustworthy source. Somebody on Facebook said, honestly, letting people in these Facebook groups get into my head. I stressed so much for so long when we first got our cow because we'd milk out a few strings every few days the first few weeks. Mastitis is always the answer, but really it's not. Not every little imperfection is mastitis. Find a good mentor. Mine has talked me off the ledge many times after losing myself in Facebook and take some deep breaths. Now I know that not everybody can have somebody nearby to help them, and maybe a phone call is the best you can do, and that can be okay as long as you've got somebody to talk to that has had cows for a long time and can actually give you good solid answers rather than asking something on a Facebook group and you get all different kinds of answers.
That being said, I do think the Facebook groups do have their place. I've asked questions myself on there a few times, but just use it wisely and don't rely on it for all of your information.
I was very fortunate to have some good mentors starting out. I had a friend from church that was hand milking a mini Jersey. I had another friend that was milking Jersey cows and Guernsey cows. And actually one of my neighbors was somebody who was raising beef cows, and he helped me out so much. Very, very important to get yourself connected with people who actually know what they're doing, who have done it for a long time. Now here's one, and I didn't hear this specifically when I asked this question on Facebook, but I've been getting some vibes in some of the comments we've gotten on our videos that a big deal in any area of homesteading, but I think maybe especially with a dairy cow, because it can be so stressful, is not having your spouse fully on board with you. And I would say that Michelle and I were maybe somewhere halfway in between. I don't know what she would say to that, but both of us definitely wanted a dairy cow, but an opportunity came up that I wanted to take a lot sooner than she was ready to go for it. And so it did work out. We worked together on it, but I think sometimes maybe it made her a little bitter about it because she had to help with things that she wasn't even ready to get into. But she did do very good with it, and it did turn out okay in the end.
And by the way, I don't feel like I've made peace with poopy tails, but I do feel like I've made my peace with udders, and it's about time that's happening.
And speaking of spouses, Michelle, what is one of the biggest mistakes you see people making when they first get a cow?
For me, the biggest hurdle with getting a cow was just the fact that I did not know what to do with 35 gallons of milk a week. That is so much milk. I saw Cody putting all this work into getting that milk out of the cow. It was really hard at first. He brought it inside and wanted me to do these great things with it, and I didn't know how. And I remember like throwing it on the garden and stuff like that and feeling really bad. I would like sneak it out to the garden when he wasn't looking. So I guess my biggest tip would be to learn how to make butter, learn how to make simple cheeses like mozzarella and ricotta, things like that. Then you won't have the extra stress of figuring it all out, plus having this massive fridge full of milk. So.
And if you're not able to sell the milk, but herd share is an option in your area, maybe look around and see if you can find some people who are interested in doing a herd share. I've got a few of these stainless steel rings and buckets that my father-in-law used to raise calves. This should work great. I'll mount this on there. This bucket will go in there. It's round at the bottom, so she'll be able to clean it out good and proper. This only goes straight back with a couple bolts, and I knew this wouldn't be stable enough, so I bolted it on to some steel angle iron, and I'm gonna fasten that up to the wall now, and this should be nice and solid. I'm gonna get some alfalfa pellets to put in there just to give her a little treat for her to come in here and try it out. Come here, Maddie. Come on, girl. Another really big one is not being prepared for your cow to have a calf. Not only are you gonna all of a sudden be swamped with tons of milk, you're gonna have to learn how to milk the cow and take care of the calf, things that you're not gonna really be able to prepare for unless you can actually go work on a dairy or something. But there's other things that you need to know before your cow has a calf. And one of those, put simply by somebody on Facebook, knowing to reduce amounts of grass, hay, alfalfa pellets before calving so there's not such a drop in calcium after that can cause milk fever. If you feed alfalfa to your cow in the last 2 months of her pregnancy, especially if you have a Jersey, there's a good chance she'll go down with milk fever. And I'm not gonna try to explain it all here, but basically it has to do with the calcium levels in her body. And I explain that in another video that I can put at the end of this one for you to watch next. And like somebody else said, not being prepared for milk fever. Having the supplies on hand to take care of it. Vets where we are don't do farm calls and you will lose your cow if not ready for it. Also have supplies on hand to diagnose and treat mastitis. I can't tell you how many times I went racing off to Tractor Supply or asked somebody if they had something if Tractor Supply wasn't open, and tried to get the right things to take care of my cow or calf when I should have had that stuff on hand to begin with. Now, I also did a video about all the things you need to have on hand before your cow has a calf, and I even made a printable checklist that you can print out so that you're able to make sure you get everything on there and check it off, and then you can feel a lot better about it. I'll put that video at the end of this one as well, and I'll put that checklist down in the description where you can click on it to be able to download it for yourself. Uh-oh. There we go. What do you think, Maddie? I think the best test is gonna be when she actually comes in here to milking and we go through a whole routine, but that seems to be really good. I think that's still high enough for her to reach up and get the hay there, but it's down low so that if she falls, she's not gonna be hanging in it. And that feed bucket is lower and that looks a lot more natural for her. Another easy mistake to make is not getting in contact with a vet, or at least finding out that there's a vet close by that can help you out if you do have a problem, and also not finding out what options you'll have to get your cow bred when the time comes. Now, after I say all that, go over all the mistakes you could make and talk about the bad things that could happen, I want to read to you one of my favorite comments that I read on the Facebook posts. I regret being so nervous about it because everyone was so adamant about having to milk at an exact time every day. The cows wouldn't be okay if you missed it by an hour, and that you couldn't milk a cow once a day, that you had to commit to 2 times a day forever. I wish I would have enjoyed it from the very beginning instead of thinking I was constantly going to mess their health up. My girls are super patient, and if life throws a curveball and we're late by a couple hours or even a couple hours early, they're still there and haven't ever had a problem from it. I want people to know it isn't as scary as some make it out to be, and the girls really do become family. Enjoy it from the beginning, and make sure you have a mentor to call when things do go bad at calving or mastitis does happen. And that really does just sum it up. I really feel like I can't say it any better than that. But I have one more comment to read to you, and I think it's about the best one. This comment was left by one of my mentors and a good friend of mine, starting out with jerseys instead of A2 registered Guernseys.
Because we're more than farmers.